get a copy off of the project website. It's under it's Appendix B in the ROD, or the Record of Decision. So what are consulting parties? It can get kind of confusing. There's consulting parties, there's concurring parties. Basically, they're all entities that join in and are part of the process are consulting parties. There are subsets, if you will, concurring parties, but they are basically just consulting parties who have agreed to take on a greater role. They are ones who have concurred with the agreements that's in the programmatic agreement, and then what they are able to do is to review the documents, any mitigation documents that we prepare as part of the mitigate adverse effects. Concurring parties have an opportunity to review. Another very important role is they also have an opportunity to get to do review as what's called context-sensitive design. Amtrak had developed in 2017 a context-sensitive design guidelines looking at the major parts of the project that have a visual effect, and talking about characteristics that would be appropriate for those design features. So as the design is developed, and at various levels, there is the opportunity for the concurring parties to look at the design and comment. And an important aspect of this is that in order to receive the engineering plans, the concurring party must sign a non-disclosure agreement. And that's something that's program-wide policy, just to protect the confidentiality of engineering drawings. So going forward, basically all consulting parties get to see if there's any new development in terms of a project change, a new historic property, then it would go out to the consulting parties. So for example, here in the Reservoir Hill area, when the medical center reached 50 years old, it was evaluated by historians and determined to be historic. That evaluation, it's a new identification of historic, went out to the consulting parties. So both consulting and concurring parties do have a role in the ongoing project, but just slightly different roles. And as I mentioned, the concurring parties do get a chance to look at mitigation. We're doing down in Midtown Edmondson where there is some demolition. There is going to be salvage. I have to go into the buildings and look at what should be salvaged. That report goes out to the concurring parties. So it's those types of things where the additional concurring parties get involved. And also, I did want to put down about the public input because, you know, oh no,
Go back.
oh no, I start pushing. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No. Leave it there for now. I wanted to put down the public opportunity for public comment, because even if the organization you're involved with doesn't want to be, isn't a concurring or consulting party, there are opportunities through the public meetings, such as the ones that were held in late September, a mediation review. Amtrak has agreed to go through an advisory review, so that will be coming up, and you have a representative chap here, and Lauren is here, thank you, and the Amtrak will be going through that review, and there will be an opportunity for local groups to become involved and comment on the design. Okay, I wanted to just list, the next two slides show the organizations that agreed to be either consulting or concurring parties. And again, everyone on these two slides, they're consulting parties. Some of the subsets are concurring or signatories. I hope it's not too confusing, but basically, most important is consulting parties, the overarching organization that gets involved in the project.
So that's not true. On the president I'm gonna let Nancy get through this part, just because we know how long it is, but we're gonna leave everybody here.
Let me follow the structure. I will answer that, I promise.
Yes.
To the best of my ability. I just.
That's an inaccuracy in your slide, I think you should address it.
We are gonna address it, but she's gonna get through that slide first. Go ahead, Nancy.
This is
Go back to the slide, let's see it.
okay, please, I'm going to finish what I'm being asked to finish, okay? And this is some information on what it means. Excuse me? Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, so let me go back to the slide. So you're saying which one is not?
Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association did not sign, the Delaware tribe did not sign, the Shawnee tribe did not sign.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Commission on Indian Affairs.
Can I finish now? Okay, can I answer the question? Okay, I'd like to answer, just let me answer. They did not sign consulting parties. The ones who signed are concurrent.
Related directly to the process, and so that is what's causing.
If an organization's name is up there, it's because they agreed at some point to be a consulting party. That's all I can tell you.
And it is documented. So what I do think we may be hearing is that people would like to see that documentation. Would that help alleviate the concern?
Absolutely.
Being able to see the documentation
What do you
that is
mean
showing.
by consulting party? Like, who they put in input?
For example, the consulting party, once the programmatic agreement is signed, the consulting parties are there if there's any project development, such as a change in the project, or if there is a new historic resource identified. So the consulting parties, in the time that I've been involved, there have been several times that we've reached out to them. Not a lot, because there aren't a lot of categories in those projects or components that fall in those two categories. But one of them was, as I mentioned, when the medical center was declared historic, we did reach out to all consulting parties.
So Nancy, can you explain what reach out means?
Well, sent them the information about the documentation saying it's a historic site, historically significant, and provide an opportunity for comment.
And that was sent in an email to the register, that organization.
Right.
Correct.
I don't understand why Bolton Hill is on there when it doesn't go through Bolton Hill and Reservoir Hill is not on there. And I mean, Mount Royal Terrace, they're saying they did, but Mount Royal Terrace Association is also just a section of Bolton Hill.
So
It's a matter of two things. Which organizations back in 2015 the project team had reached out to, and which ones responded.
So does that show discrimination?
It's not, no, hold on. It isn't productive because everyone's asking at the same time. So that's why I wanted to get to where I could give you a microphone and we can get a very specific question. If you could, can we let Nancy get through just how she can get information to you? And then I want to answer the questions. I just want to make sure that you get through.
No, I think that'd be very well.
Is that everything you had?
All information.
It was just some resource information that's available on the State Preservation Officer's website and also on the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation website. But if I may, what I'd be interested in is I've worked with 106 for a long time. I'm trying to understand what the concern is from your end. Is it that you don't want to be involved, or you want to be more involved? I guess I'd like to understand. It's got to.
And I'm gonna ask that you get a microphone to one person.
Get the microphone.
So we don't like the idea of.
Well, I hear you. I'm gonna let one person, and then I'll give you a microphone. Go ahead. Because I want to make sure people hear.
Thank you. Angel's point is well made. That's Angel St. Jean. She's the vice president of the Historic Mount Royal Terrace Association. There are also people here from the Reservoir Hill Association and Upper Madison, Utah Neighborhood Association. We are on the alignment. Bolton Hill is not. And so, recently, Nancy, you reached out to RHA asking if they would become a concurring party. And we were all very confused by that. Did it mean you were renegotiating this agreement? did it mean it was going to be, you were asking for more input? Were you just trying to distract us? Which, that seems like it's maybe what you're doing here. I mean, you've got 2.75 earmarked for historic preservation, and that's very specifically in Edmonton. So I don't know, what does that do for us? You identify adverse effects in section 106 in the PA, but.
There was nothing negative meant in terms of the invitation. The information was relayed to me that the organizations I reached out to had expressed interest in joining. And it was as simple as that.
Okay, so just to give context to interest in joining, at a meeting on 2001 Park Avenue in February of this year, earlier this year, several individuals from Reservoir Hill, and I wanted to be clear, so I went back to check what my notes were. The organization that was on the call was Reservoir Hill Improvement Council. And so, and
That would explain it.
I was on that call.
Correct, I was not discounting all of the other groups. The person that I wrote the note from, so that I wrote Kate Jennings, RHIC, that was who made that statement at that time. And the very specific statement was, why aren't we a consulting party? So it was a question, and then how do we go about it? So that was the question that we recorded. As part of our process, at that point, I conveyed that information to Nancy, and Nancy then reached out, and what we did try to determine was which organizations were in that call. On that call also, and that's where I was gonna get to, the person who made the comment was Kate Jennings from RHIC, but the others in the room included Reservoir Hill Association, I think Upper Utah, Upper Madison, and then we have, right, I'm just trying to remember all, because it's on my notes. So all of those organizations were on the call, and so what we did was, in order to make sure we covered our bases, we said all of the organizations so that Nancy could do that reach out. So that's where that came from in terms of the interaction, and Nancy has expressed that to me.
And also, as I mentioned, the invitation was to come from the federal agency, so I had coordinated with the Federal Railroad Administration. So they asked me to reach out on their behalf.
So hopefully that explains how that invitation was extended and why.
I think
Alright.
there's something critical that you're not understanding about what we're saying.
Okay.
We're
I
saying,
understand.
and I've been raising my hand, I'll just stand up, I can
No,
project.
we're gonna do it, we're gonna make sure you have a mic so everybody can hear you, please.
So to explain why we're upset, I think you're gonna get that very clearly tonight, that we're very upset about your engagement, if we haven't been clear on that before. It has not been thorough, and it hasn't been correct, and it hasn't been culturally appropriate for our community. And I think, what you're not understanding is that there are historical divides, even within this community, that come from histories of segregation. When you only invite the east side of our neighborhood to a conversation about a federally recognized, our entire neighborhood is historic. When you do that, you might not understand that, but that is a legacy, a racist legacy about who gets to sit at the table and have these types of conversations. So that's part of what you're feeling. I'm explaining, you asked the question.
No, I'm not, I'm just asking, what my facial expression is only invited the east side. So that was the part that I.
Historic Mount Royal Terrace.
Okay, that's, I was
Association,
looking for
if
that.
you indeed invited them.
Mhm.
That's a very specific choice Amtrak made, that says something very specific to our community. And if you are actually engaged in the community, anybody could have explained that to you, but you're not, and that's the problem. So, further, there are many historic organizations throughout the neighborhood, including Upper Utah Madison Neighborhood Association, which has been very active and has done amazing things in this neighborhood, but you have also not engaged them in this process, right? And so, because of that, I don't believe that you actually fully engaged with Historic Mount Royal Terrace Neighborhood Association either. Because if you would have known in 2015 that 2001 Park Avenue, one of the oldest and most historic buildings in our neighborhood, was on the alignment. You would have known that in 2015, not in 2022, okay? So that's what we're trying to tell you. We're educated people. We're very smart. We know our neighborhood. We understand our culture. So when we shout out, when you point something out that doesn't align with our reality, we're gonna say something. So you just have to get used to it. So if you don't want to hear it, all you have to do is sit.
Listen, so what I'm gonna, 1 second.
No, I'm not done.
No,
No,
not
All
today.
you have to
No.
I'm asking for, it's not at you, I'm asking that we're here as professionals, we're trying to do the very best we can, and I'm gonna have to protect us from shame on yous, those kind of statements.
But it is shameful.
But yeah,
as
and
a
you're not
professional, you
professional.
need to take that, because this has way more impact on us
Thank
than
you.
shame. We're not
Thank you.
talking about shame.
Right.
We're talking about livelihood. We're talking about our environment. We're talking about our legacy.
Health.
We're talking about our descendants, okay? So you can take the shame tonight. That's what you're gonna take, because I told you, Odessa, tonight was not the night to have this meeting. You should have engaged us before, so you're gonna get what we have to say tonight.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what's going to
But
happen.
what I will
Okay,
do-
and I will say it respectfully.
That's all
And
I'm
people
asking.
will cheer
That's all
if
I'm
they're in
asking.
agreement.
Yes,
Okay?
ma'am. Yes,
And we're
ma'am.
not gonna be silent.
I'm not gonna have, that's what it is, but what I will not allow is for the disrespect, so
I'm not being
I wasn't
disrespectful.
talking to you, I wasn't saying it to you, that's
Okay.
why, what I said is, can you pause for 1 moment?
Disrespect came from your colleague.
Yes.
She rolled her eyes and shrugged.
I know, but it is, I think because she's a person.
Ma'am, please, please,
Yes,
please.
This is not appropriate, and you certainly cannot roll your eyes at Keandra. The people in this room,
That's right.
But what
you
you're,
seem to think you're better than us.
I do not think that. But I'm here. Are you gonna speak, right?
So what I.
You don't have, well then,
I don't want you to protect.
Now,
Okay, all right, so,
we
what I.
just need to imagine if this were happening in your home, in your backyard, to your
Thank you.
legacy, then you would understand why we feel and we're speaking the way we're speaking tonight. Start there. Start there. There is no excuse.
Thank you.
There is no excuse to be flippant to us tonight. It is too late. It's been 7 years of this, okay? So that's all we're saying. If you want to truly understand what went wrong with that one process, which is one of very, 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 very many, I'm trying to explain that to you, okay? That's what you did wrong. Now, if you actually want to sit down with our community and find out what the actual impact to the historic architecture in our community, we can explain that to you. Because we have a lot of people in this neighborhood that are researchers, that are architects, that are lawyers, that just have history, decades of history in the community, right? And they can do that. But you just haven't asked, and that's why you don't know. So that's all I was saying. And I'm sure a lot of people are in agreement about that.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
let's reset, okay? Because what has happened so far is unacceptable, and no one here is happy. I just want you to know.
And so I actually was trying to prevent an exchange, so I have to, as a facilitator, do my best to try to keep, I wanna hear what you're saying, but I can't hear it when it turns into kind of a back and forth. So that's all I was trying to do, just to make sure that we're giving a chance for you to have your voice and us to hear it, okay? So that, it is a tough, there's actually someone behind there, so that's why I'm holding for a second. It's a tough job, and we understand that, and that's actually why we're here, right? We're here today, we were here the other day, and we're gonna continue to be here, and we know that it's not always gonna be an easy conversation. I want to kind of reiterate that a lot of things that are part of that process, the Section 106 process, that were part of the federal process that already occurred. One of the reasons that Nancy was here explaining Section 106 was so that people could understand what that process is and figure out how or if there's an interest in continuing or having a changing role in the process.
And I guess
So that
what
was
we're
the
saying
purpose.
is the process has been fraudulent. How you decided the alignment should be in this community because we have a less historic impact in the city is false. And it's false because you did not engage the community. That's what we're saying to you. So when you say continue, that reads false.
Yeah.
It
No,
reads false.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
When I
I'm
say
just,
continue, I'm trying to make sure
You
I'm
said
being clear.
continued.
We're here to have, if there is a changing role, a desire to change the way that it is currently characterized, meaning the discussion about signatories, consulting parties, concurring parties, at those two subsets, was intended to allow an opportunity, if there is a desire to change that status, for people to understand it, so that you could choose to change it or not. So that was the intent, right? The intent of our team is never to insult, it is trying to learn, and it is trying to operate the process. I do want to make sure that we answer, and I don't think it's answer today, because I don't quite know the details, about who was invited, because that statement just kind of rung to me that only invited the eastern side, and I don't know that that characterization is accurate, but I need to get the answer. So we need to find out if, it's kind of a documentation question, what's the documentation that we have that shows who we reached out to then, so that we'll be a little bit clearer now. Does that align? Okay.
It
So
does,
there was, Jordan, somehow I ended up with your microphone. Oh, you have it? Okay, so there was a question back here for a while, and then there's a question here. You got that one, thank you, Nancy.
I hear what you're saying, but what is very clear and evident, even with the flash when Nancy, the slides were misplaced, is I saw with a quick flash the names of the consulting and concurring parties, and Reservoir Hill was not listed. And it's about Reservoir Hill, majority, in this.
In this section, correct.
This section, right. So how is it that you're making decisions about a community and they're not consulting or concurring? Haven't been invited?
So to clarify, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy's gonna try to address some of that, but I think, first off, we're probably confusing a little bit with the groups that were invited versus the groups that agreed to be either a consulting party or a concurrent party, right? So, like Odessa was saying, this isn't a list of every organization that was invited, and I don't know the list myself, but we can certainly get that information, and if a group or organization did not agree to be consulting or concurring party, then they're not up there on the slide, right? So
That is so important. When you made the decision to put the tunnel in 2017, when you consulted the Bolton Hill Community Association, but you did not come to Reservoir
Thank
Hill.
you.
And you ended up putting
Okay,
the
so
tunnel in
right
this community.
right now, you're assuming, and I don't know the
No,
answer.
that-
No, you're assuming.
No, hold on.
Concurring parties, they did not concur. So, but they must have agreed to be consulting parties. And this-
No, that's what she's saying.
I'm sorry, what?
So and in order to, go ahead. Yeah, in order to make sure everybody understands, that's kind of why I wanted her to get through the explanation. But in order to make sure everyone understands, Nancy, can you go back and explain just one more time about the people who are signing and saying, yes, I am a concurring party?
People in 2015, that was before I was involved in the project, typically what happens is the agency would reach out to organizations, about perhaps local neighborhood groups, historical organizations, local government, and invite them on behalf of the agency, Federal Railroad Administration, to become a consulting party. They would also then share the information about what it means to be a concurring party. Concurring parties, you're right in that, the concurring parties need to sign the programmatic agreement. If they have a CP next.
So I am.
That's the question.
This is an FRA process. The process was followed. The flawed process may be your opinion, but there is an
No,
FRA
yours.
process that is designed to protect all. There's a process that's designed to protect all of the parties in this type of situation. And that process was followed. The process was followed. And the parties that agreed to be consulting or concurring parties are listed. So we're not telling you all the parties that were invited. We can go get that information and make that and provide that information. All of the parties here are listed. They're actually all listed in the programmatic agreement, right? And the programmatic agreement is on the website, right? So in terms of who signed, that's already on the website in terms of going and you can go right to the website right now. The programmatic agreement's on there. And everybody who's on here was either agreed to be a consulting party or agreed to be a concurring party, and those concurring parties signed the agreement.
Okay, so our legal processes for section 106, why would you go tell the banner that you were planning a demolition and send a flyer out to the community members in Reservoir Hill when the process is being amended, and by law, that cannot be, there could be no federal funds spent on that project? Do you plan and anticipate to finish this by November? The section 106?
Yeah.
No, because you're not
No,
following.
that's,
the
we
legal
read the
process.
statute. We read the
You are
statute.
missing, in the environmental impact study, they said one building, one property would be impacted in Reservoir Hill, and that is not true. So there are things in project changes in the environmental impact study from 2017 to now. You need to redo the environmental impact study because of all the changes, and it's a legal requirement.
Right, so I actually want to, I want to actually have someone come and talk to you about what the actual process is, because I'm a little concerned that there's some inaccuracies, and we don't.
What are the
know
inaccuracies?
about what that legal process is. Oh, I'm sorry, yes, you actually did, this was before, I apologize.
I would like to understand, in terms of signing, agreeing to sign this versus not agreeing, if you agree to be a concurrent party or a consulting party, are you basically saying that you agree with the project? And if you say you don't wanna sign, that means you don't agree with the project? Because what I wanna understand, more about is, a lot of us, I mean, you know, we've been talking about this for a long time, so we don't, agree with the project, like, you have problems with it. We don't know if there are people who don't have a problem with it, who are signing and saying, like, we're gonna be the ones to represent the community because we agree with this, and our voices of the people who don't agree are not at the table in terms of making sure that whatever does happen, if, we would like this to go away altogether, but whatever does happen, that it is in our best interest as well. And do you have to be a consulting party or a concurring party to be able to have your voice at the table and represent it in that way?
So I'm gonna let Nancy answer that question to make sure it is said accurately, the answer. But you don't have to be a supporter. I think this is my gist from your question. You don't have to support the project to be a concurring party. Is that the gist of what you're, huh? I'm sorry, consultant, right, let's say consultant, I'm sorry. Correct. Yes, yes.
I'm trying to understand if being one or the other means that you support it, and if you don't support it and you sign on, is that an opportunity to
Correct.
weigh in?
Yes.
So if you don't sign on, then you don't have the opportunity to weigh in?
Well, even if you don't sign on, because there's a public process, you still have an opportunity to weigh in. So, as an example, when you're talking about a historic building that you might be commenting on, the public, we still have to have a public process.
So what are you going to do to engage with Reservoir Hill and all of Reservoir Hill moving forward?
Okay, so I think those are two separate questions, all right? So the question about what I'm gonna make sure that you guys. The question about what we're gonna do about community engagement. Community engagement as a whole, around the whole program, is really just kind of getting started for the construction phase. However, we're going to continue to have meetings. So as an example of what is currently occurring, when we have a lot of things that we have to cover and a lot of things that communities want to make sure they understand. So if any community, and we've said this at every opportunity we can, if any community wants us to come to a meeting to have a conversation, we are very willing to do that. So our
And not
team is
only
willing to
told
come.
you how to come, but in which way and how you wanted the information, and you said no, Luigi Rosa, to every single demand. So please don't play in our face.
Thank
He
you.
told you
question is this.
exactly,
My question is this.
exactly how to come.
You guys
go ahead.
already have a plan. You pushing it down our throat. You
Yes.
wanna do it anyway. Flanagan has a place over here, they got a 2-story high of dirt blowing down my neighborhood. My mother died from that stuff, my father died from that stuff, my father-in-law died from that stuff. Y'all are pushing doo-doo through the neighborhood.
Yes.
And then you come in
Yes.
here and disrespect us?
Yes.
Like you concerned?
Yes.
Put it in your yard.
Thank you.
That's what you need to do. Put it in your yard. Don't blow smoke up my ass.
Thank you.
Okay, and then this gentleman here for me, Jordan, thank you. And then I'm gonna try to, Ms. Apple, can I try to get to the tunnel depth or?
You just answer our
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, because somebody else did. So, we do not, they're taking notes right in the back. I have 10 members taking notes every time I have a meeting.
But you don't share them.
And you don't.
I'm taking questions so that we
Share the
can then answer.
presentation, but you don't share your meeting notes. So
Or
could
what
you
you
start
say.
doing that?
And you don't share the maps.
Push this stuff down somebody's throat. Get you agenda pass. Y'all playing this
So,
behind
so
closed
the
doors.
challenge, so what I forgot part of it in that response. So, so in terms of community engagement, so we're gonna continue to, schedule meetings that are public meetings, but attend community meetings in every community that is along the alignment. So every community that is along the alignment, we will continue to have community meetings. We will also, we're working on starting a newsletter that can kind of explain in a broader sense, because everybody is not at the same place in terms of their understanding of the project. And we recognize that everybody doesn't go on the internet, everybody doesn't kind of research the same way. When we have meetings and do notifications, our notifications are varied based on what that particular meeting is. So some meetings we're mailing a postcard, some meetings we're doing a door hanger. It depends on kind of how big or small the issue we're having a conversation around is. We're also putting signs up in the neighborhood where we can. We're also doing social media, because we're just trying to figure out all of the ways in which we can communicate and notify people of a meeting. One of the requests that we received was to send everything by certified mail to every property owner. I'm gonna give you what has happened to me in the past, because I think that is a very clear challenge. When we have sent certified mail in Baltimore City on other projects, one of the challenges is you have to sign to receive it. And then people don't get it, because they don't actually make it to the post office in order to sign. So when we started that process and did certified mail during the planning phase, one of the things we heard from the community was, well, that's inconvenient for us. So what we started doing was instead mailing postcards, right? So mailing them along all of the alignments that we studied during planning.
The first postcard I've ever received from you, I got last week.
And I'm saying in planning. So there are I'm talking about what I've done over the entire.
Different projects, not in this project, 'cause I've been-
Correct. No, so correct, I'm saying all across the city, on projects that we have done, when we do certified mail, that becomes the challenge. So that's one of the reasons why. Now, when we have direct engagements on property owner, right, so it's in the real estate process, that process can be a little bit different. But in general, certified mail, while it seems upfront to be, well, we guarantee everyone gets it, you kind of don't, because if people don't get to the post office, it actually can become a challenge.
The courts use it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Right, so we do have proof of all of the addresses that we mail to, because we use a mail house. That mail house then sends us that completed list of all of the properties we mail to. But because it is private who we mail to, that's not what we can give out. So what we can say is, we know we mail to all of these addresses.
Are you able to inform Baltimore City
Thank you, y'all on point. They so full of shit.
Have a good night, sir.
Yeah, they so full
Oh,
of shit.
excuse me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, and if I can do you one further and get it closer. If you call and ask me if I mailed to your address, I can tell you every time I did. Right, but I'm saying
I want to help, and so, I need to understand. I mean, a lot of comments been made, people yell, but I would like to understand. I'm not saying we can go through it now, but perhaps you could send me an email to further explain to me the difference, the east and west. There's a lot that, to be honest, I do not understand, and so I am asking sincerely. I'm willing to help you on behalf of historic preservation, but I need to understand better than I've been able to do today.
Nancy, may I? Please?
so. Hold on. I actually had another person with a microphone.
Okay,
Yes,
and I can
thank
go
you.
after?
I have to move on. We've got to be out of here.
You guys never answer the
Right. So
question.
the meeting.
If you don't get to people's questions,
That's what
then
I'm.
you're going to.
That's what I'm trying to do, Ms. Apple. I agree. This gentleman was the last question, and then I have to try to get through the end.
Well, it
And
shouldn't be
then-
the last question.
No, we'll have more questions after, but
But I hope you're hearing, really, that people are pretty frustrated.
Yes.
Because we don't actually think you're hearing this, and we think you probably haven't. But Nancy, didn't it strike you as odd when you looked at that list that you made a slide of, that there was no Reservoir Hill listing among the consulting parties? I mean,
No.
what do you think about language? Consulting means you're being asked, and you're being able to, in fact, input. Conferring means that concurring means that you agree. And doesn't that strike you as odd that we don't feel that this has been true since the beginning of the project, since before the project, that we haven't been consulted?
That's discriminatory.
It's discriminatory.
Okay, first off, the list of concurring parties. Let me finish. The list was created back in 2015. So when I started the project, those were the consulting concurring parties. This is the first opportunity that I've had to consider expanding it, and I did talk to federal. But let me also say that there were organizations that were invited as part of the medical center becoming historic. We coordinated with the Federal Railroad Administration, and we sent out invitations for additional consulting parties, and we then followed up again. So Reservoir Hill Improvement Council, they have been invited 4 times, and I have it here. They've been invited 4 times.
They don't represent us.
How often do we have to say it?
Association with Reservoir Hill.
But you're asking me, isn't it strange? Let me finish. I'm being asked, is it strange that there is no consulting party with the name word Reservoir Hill? And I'm saying that there is an organization
That said
Reservoir Hill.
Populations that they would like to assist, they are not capable of speaking to
But my question is,
say no because it's not.
right, which is why I was trying to get.
And who's on the
All right,
board?
so I am just interest of time, and I definitely know the same.
And part of section 106 is community engagement and engaging and understanding the cultural landscape of this community.
Thank
Where
you.
you don't understand it, and we're
Clearly.
trying to help you, but you won't let us.
And it
We're
seems
trying to
like
help
saying
you
that
out.
Section 106 was completed in
It is not.
2017.
No, we said the programmatic agreement was in 2017, we didn't say that section 106 was complete. It's an ongoing, concern, correct?
So did federal funds go into that building at the corner of North Avenue in Utah before you completed section 106? And also, Nancy, I want to ask you, because you say that you care about the community, I want to understand why Amtrak would say that they do not plan on working and following the local local regulations and the historic preservation laws of Baltimore City.
That is a federal legislation, I
But you say that
understand.
you care, but you're not gonna follow the local law.
Well, first off, I'm not Amtrak.
Right, correct.
I'm a consultant working for Amtrak.
For section
I don't know that, I'm pretty sure we didn't say we weren't gonna follow the law.
Local law.
We did not say that we were not going to follow the law.
But you haven't, when you did the soil.
Amtrak is not obligated to, it does not plan to comply with the requirements of the local regulations with respect to this matter.
So that was out of context, can you just, I think
No.
we need to know which matter we're referring to in order to be able to respond.
Well, it's a matter of, I know what it is.
Okay,
It's a
I just
reference-
don't, so that's
Well, it's a
trying to get
reference to
kind
the medical center being a locally designated historic building.
Right.
And
So you're here
Amtrak,
for historic preservation, but the building looks like a New York City water treatment plant. It doesn't even follow anything that's related to the historic nature and architecture of this neighborhood.
So some parts, I think just out of fairness again, I do want to get to, there were very specific requests for us to discuss the depth of the tunnel. I do not want to lose that
Who
opportunity.
requested this meeting?
It's much
Who
more,
requested today's date?
correct.
What
I'm sorry.
organization in this neighborhood requested the specific agenda for today and today's date?
I have to remember, I can't.
It's
say.
RHIC.
It's RHIC.
Well, it was,
This company that you keep confusing with their name.
Yes,
so let me,
yes.
I am very clear on that. Let me just try to give this again.
How many
There
people
were
wanna hear about the depth of the tunnel? Raise your hand. The depth of the tunnel.
Look at how many.
And
Right?
I
mean,
So they
Yeah.
just ask the people what they want.
Right, they actually have been saying it, and I'm responding to the people saying, I do want to hear about that.
And we actually want the document. We want
Correct.
what you're about to show us. We want it to own it. So all of our neighbors.
We're
can
gonna
see it.
move on and talk about the depth of the tunnel. The document that David will kind of run through will be available on the website. So,
Awesome.
all right,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for
About
bringing that,
time.
finally. We've been asking for it for a month.
So I'm gonna let David, and David, I'm gonna give you the mic, sorry. I'm gonna let David talk about this. The information, like Mark mentioned, is going to be on the website. Yeah, he'll be live. He's back. It is going to be on the website. One of the reasons for our purposes is we wanted David to be able to talk you through it just a little bit. Yep, right. It's a little bit easier to have someone
I was
explain
gonna say,
it.
just switch over to the,
Yeah. I'm going up top.
in the interest of time, just go ahead and switch over to the.
I'm going
Oh,
up top.
I'm sorry.
Yep,
Sure.
I got you.
Great. All right. So thank you for having me. My name is David Abrams. I'm an engineer, and I've been doing tunnels across the United States for about 20 years. I have boyish good looks, but I have been doing this for about 20 years. Cities just like Baltimore, Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco,
Seattle
Oakland.
and Los Angeles are not like Baltimore.
Thank you.
Nothing's like
Good
Baltimore.
point.
Nothing's like
Thank
you.
you.
So
Philadelphia.
the point that I'm trying to make is that I've dealt with these issues before, and I understand what you're trying to say. I do.
No, you don't.
Anyway, so what we're trying to show over here is just a plan and a profile of our tunnel. Okay, so this is an engineering drawing. I wish I could actually stand up there to show people because I know that some of you folks are interested. So this is.
It's kind of hard to hear. Yeah.
That's why
Sorry.
we asked for a giant print of it. That's why we asked for that.
So,
But you said no.
I'm sorry. I was just give me a
right,
sec.
so David.
Yep.
If Nancy, do you have the pointer? Oh, no, I do. Here you go, David.
Okay, climb up.
Yep, and
Sure.
here you go, the green button right there.
Thank you. Okay, so what do we have here? These are engineering drawings, okay? So what we have here is a plan drawing and a profile drawing. So if you were to look at your house, you look at a plan drawing, you'd be looking at it straight down, so that would be a plan drawing. And then when you're looking at it like a section through it, that would be a profile, okay? So that's like a longitudinal section. Now these drawings are kind of special because they're on such a big scale. This is a big project. So when you're looking at this, you have something called your track alignment, and you also have your elevation and which is related to your depth, okay? So right here, that notes
what the elevation is for your tunnel. These tick marks right here are representing how long it's going to be, okay? So I'm not trying to say this to talk down to anybody, I'm just trying to get everybody on the same page here about what these represent. Because these are very important documents, at least they are to me. So what we have here is this is approximately the location of the Lafayette Bridge, okay? And as we move forward, this is the tunnel descending into the ground, okay? And as we can see here, the tunnel is going to continue. This is, this is, where are we? So,
I'm gonna move into,
the Penn North
this is
area.
here, I don't have my glasses on,
Sure.
sorry. There we are, West North Avenue.
Great. So this is where we're going to start our show, okay? So this is the Penn North location, which is the MTA facility that was built, I believe, in the 1980s. Actually, my company was involved in that. That's part of Baltimore's transportation system, right? So this is the tunnel right here, as you can see. And when you descend down, you can align the location in plan to the depth, okay? So if we look at the Pennsylvania Avenue, you can align Pennsylvania Avenue in cross-section, okay? And so this is 200, pardon me?
You give the cross streets for each elevation that you're letting out?
Yes, definitely. We heard that and we thought that was an excellent idea, so we included that in both plan and in section. So you can align yourself, okay? And so what you also have here is you also have plans. This is the block and lot, so that's basically where your houses are. So if you were to take a Google map overlay, which this basically is, you can find out where your house is. Okay. Is everybody with me?
Yep. It is not yet.
Not right now, it's gonna be posted tomorrow. But you can see
It might take like,
Yes.
it might take like
Yeah.
2 or 3 days, but yes.
I think that's what you explained. Because
Thank you,
it's showing
Keandra.
see where your property is,
Yeah.
it's planned into the upper portion.
Right.
And you project it down into the profile to see what the depth of the tunnel is at that location.
That's right. And in some cases, you'll be offset from the tunnel, so it's going to become like a triangulation, if you can imagine that. I don't want to get into the math of it, but you can approximately get how deep this tunnel is.
Can you tell us the depth? We can't see.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pennsylvania Avenue?
Yes.
Sure, the depth of,
So
The depth at Pennsylvania.
David just kind of read off from the top at Pennsylvania Avenue what the elevation is there.
sure.
Where it shows the tick mark that's crossing Pennsylvania Avenue
Yeah.
all the way over.
No problem. So these are in 40-foot increments. This is 240 right up here. This is 200. This is the elevation of the street, so it's continuing upward. Reservoir Hill, it's a hill, it's a big mountain, so you can see the grade is rising, okay? So if this is 200, and if you're at Pennsylvania Avenue, that's probably at about 220, right? And then when you're down here, at the top of your tunnel, you're looking at 200, 160, 120, and this is elevation 80, okay? Excuse me?
What's at the,
The bottom is just going to the center of the earth, okay?
Yeah, so elevation is relative to sea level. Presumably, elevation 0 is sea level, right?
Yeah, yeah, clearly.
Well, no, not this way.
So just to give perspective on everything, if you're riding in the New York City subway, you're probably about 40 feet or 50 feet below surface. In this case, you're well over 100 feet below ground surface.
So real quick, just David, what did you say? So the elevation of Pennsylvania Avenue there was about 220, you said?
That's correct.
And then the top of the tunnel is elevation 80?
That's correct.
So 140?
140 feet.
So at Pennsylvania Avenue, where the tunnel crosses under Pennsylvania Avenue, the top of the tunnel is about 140 feet below grade.
and then the top of rail.
Okay, yeah, so the elevation that shows up on the, I think we took it, the top of rail elevation, which is about another 20
feet.
About 20 feet below the top of the tunnel.
Correct.
You gotta subtract another 20 feet. So the top of rail elevation is about 20 or so feet below the top of the tunnel. We were trying to illustrate this all for the top of the tunnel. I mean, I think, that's what maybe, I'll put it this way. I know there's lots of concerns in terms of the construction concerns, if there were any, right? We don't feel there's a construction concerns, but if there are construction concerns, you're worried about the top of the tunnel.
We'd like to see where the depth of the tunnel is going to be in Reservoir Hill.
We're coming.
Sure,
we're-
Sure, so,
Right, we'll get there.
We are
And
going across.
I was just gonna say, from an operational perspective, you're more concerned about the top of rail, right? Because that's where your trains are going across, right?
and also consider, and I appreciate that comment very much, but also consider, we need to sort of get a baseline understanding of what the heck these things are talking about, so that people can read them and understand them and digest them. So I wanted to start from the left side and work my way to the right. So I hope that works for everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think in plan, we're just about almost getting to, the next slide will probably be the Reservoir Hill.
Correct.
Yep, thank you. Yep, that's right. So, Reservoir Hill,
So the street to the furthest, the furthest street on the left is Woodbrook Avenue, and the furthest street on the right on this sheet is Druid Hill Avenue.
that's correct. And as you can see, the ground surface kind of maintains itself while the tunnel keeps descending down. So we're maintaining about this 140 to 150 foot offset between the top of the tunnel and all the way to street level. So in this case, we are north of North Avenue.
Which is technically the Penn North neighborhood.
Yes, and we're
Yes.
continuing on, just giving ourselves perspective.
Okay, so we're rising right here. This is Utah right here. This is almost at 240, and we're all the way down at 80, probably at about like 40, probably at about 60.
About
right here.
60?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's quite deep.
40 or
right here.
60?
So
Which number is it?
So
Oh,
just
it's
for
60
clarity,
feet.
It is 60 feet, so what he's doing,
Elevation 60.
elevation is 60. Just for anyone who's going to look at these plans when they're up on the site, he's telling you, he's reading the numbers going down so that he can figure out where he is for perspective.
Right,
So
so-
at this point, we're at 60 feet.
Elevation, so that the ground surface is elevation 220, top of tunnel is elevation 60, right? So the difference is
160.
about
It's
160
from the
feet.
ground, not from our basements, right? So
That's
from the
from
ground
that's
level,
from-
not.
Yeah, so what I'm describing to everybody is the ground surface elevation, which is 220, and then the top of the tunnel, which is at about 60. So that's a 160 foot offset between the ground surface and the top of the tunnel.
So David,
I
just
hope that's
because-
clear.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
it is. So David, I think what would be helpful is if we gave top of it, that's kind of the center line of the street that's listed. So it says on the left, center line of McCullough, and on the right, it has center line of Utah Place. Just so you kind of have the perspective coming through.
Yeah. Let's carry on to the right. Yeah.
So
Okay.
here we are, oh yes,
Great question. So this is the intermediate ventilation cavern. Okay, so this is another tunnel that's going to connect out. Yes, another
and
question.
we have a plan, we have a view of that at the end.
That's right.
That'll show this in another direction.
Okay, but I sent a long email, just not advocacy, like, thank you so much to our neighborhood leaders for everything they're doing, just like as a mom inquiring about health and safety.
Sure.
With my kid who plays right next to that ventilation station every day, and I was
Sure.
told to come to this meeting, and they didn't take the time to write me back.
Okay.
So I just wanna make sure that before we run out of time, first of all, just as someone who does community engagement and is a higher level federal employee, bad practice, when someone takes the time to write that kind of email, write them back, provide the information. Second of all, I just wanna make sure we get to talk about the ventilation station.
That is my goal, but we do have to be, which is what I was trying to, we have to be out of the building at 8. So that's
Oh,
the
we're gonna
time
talk
we have
about
to
that.
6:15. So that's why I was trying to move this along a little bit, because I knew those
We're
two
gonna
were
talk
coming.
about that.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Do you wanna explain the, yeah?
The ventilation cavern?
Yeah, well, no, you said I'm sorry, the height, the depth there.
Yep, so
Yeah.
the depth is remaining about the same over at this location. You can see that this is, the height of this is probably at about 80, and this is well over 200, probably about 220. So we're looking at about 140 feet below ground surface. Okay.
Okay. So that was Jordan, Linden, and Brookfield to the furthest.
And that bumps out, since we can't see the streets, would you mind just pointing out where that bump out is,
No.
which center line?
Oh, that was what I just said, but I think maybe you didn't hear me. So I
That's
said
Linden Avenue.
it was Jordan, Linden, Brookfield.
I see, and
Yeah.
where about on Linden, if you could say which block we're on?
So we are north of Dupatel, and I can't see the street above it.
Because you drilled that actually right in front of my house, so I wanted to know
what kind of ventilation will I be expecting north of Jucatell on Linden? And that's actually right across from where her son lives.
Yeah, so when we're gonna have this is the tunnel leading to, so when we get to that slide, we're showing it in a different view so that you can see that strip.
If you printed the maps, it would have been helpful. Just
Yes.
letting you know. It
That's a
would have
great
been really
idea.
helpful.
Yeah, definitely. Could you move to the next slide,
I did.
please? Yep, thank you. So you can see that the slope of the surface is kind of descending a little bit, and the tunnel is actually rising. But we still have a very significant amount of cover. Cover is the term used to describe the distance between the top of the tunnel and the ground surface. Okay. Like I said, typically for trains, they're about 60, 50 feet.
Are getting to the areas of terror.
It's a very variable answer, and so one of the things that we will say kind of consistently is that we are designing to the standard, the federal standards, right? That you would design to for any tunnel structure, but that is not something that we're dictated. It's told to us what we have to design for, and so that is not one of the things, right? And there is no structure that is designed for that in a transportation structure. Yeah, and so just David, I'm at about 7:35.
Yep.
I want to make sure we get through and then get to the IVF.
Yeah, well, I gotta catch a train, so
Yep.
that's where I'm at.
You're right, okay. Go ahead.
So, right here is the approach. So this is where the tunnel is going to make daylight, and where it's ultimately gonna connect to Baltimore Penn Station. Okay. So this is, if you can kind of see off in the distance over here, these are the MTA light rail tracks.
Correct.
These are kind of the note for the light rail tracks, so people can orient themselves.
And then the last one, which was where we said we would give the other view.
Right. So if people remember, there was that horseshoe shape, right? The woman who was asking about her child. This is the horseshoe shape. This is kind of a reverse look of it. And then there's going to be this smallish tunnel that is going to travel about 600 feet. And then there's going to be a shaft that's built with this ventilation facility above. Okay.
So I wanted to make sure I covered that. I gotta go back to the ventilation. So this is Linden Avenue here, and this is Duval.
And where's the, so, yeah, okay, so that's.
The facility is going to be right here.
So we're here.
That's correct.
Excuse me, would you be able to speak more towards the depth of the tunnel? I guess at Mount Royal Terrace on the east side on the exit, and is there any impact, or I guess effects of I-83, the vibrations there on the homes on specifically Mount Royal Terrace and vibrations coming from a tunnel?
Sure.
You know,
So,
right below.
So as a part of the process, we are, it's a state highway, so we are in coordination with them regarding the I-83 ramp. Okay, so I'd like to state that. We have to move back one more slide, please.
I was trying to, I can't see.
Sure.
Yep, there it is.
Right, so here's the Jones Falls Expressway. This is probably one of the, I have to say, still a very large distance, but one of the lower points for a residential neighborhood as a part of this tunnel alignment. So it's probably about an order of about 70 to 75 feet of distance. Okay. I hope that answers.
I'm just want to make sure I orient you. This is Mount Royal Terrace here, and this JFX is here.
Right, just to the left of this Jones Falls Expressway. Okay. Does that answer your question?
It does, in regarding the depth. Now, there are vibrations from I-83 that are felt into the neighborhood, possibly all the way to Park Avenue.
Yep.
How does this additional impact on the soil have on these homes that were built in 1893 or about that time?
So how are they going to contribute to the existing vibrations that are occurring due to the Jones Falls Expressway? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
Yeah. So they are in different locations, so I can't necessarily answer your question specifically right now about that, but I would say that these are probably independent of each other, but we would need to take a look at that. So, that's a very good question.
One's above grade, one's below grade.
Right.
Correct.
Do
There were soil samples taken, EC2R, I believe was the engineering
Yes,
company.
that's correct.
That took the soil samples. So
Yes.
was there any variance between, samples that were taken down on Linden versus what was taken on Mount Royal Terrace?
Were there soil samples that were different?
Or you can give us the geology report and we can interpret it ourselves, if you give us the report.
My question.
Yes.
First time I saw it, and I think I was taught to light a candle versus curse of the darkness. So I didn't come to curse the darkness, I came to light a candle and figure things out. Let me ask you this, what's the timeline from beginning to the ending of the construction of the tunnel? How many years will that take?
Sure, that's a great question. So the duration of the tunnel is probably gonna be a little bit over a year's time from start to finish.
So,
Just for the tunnel.
that's just for the tunnel, so to provide clarity, that's just for the tunnel construction.
That's correct.
Yes. Yeah, and once again, just for clarity, the overall program to get everything done, I mean, is almost 10 years, right? So there's 2.5 years or so before we get to the point where you're ready to actually start tunneling with the TBM. But then I think David was answering your question regarding the tunnel boring duration, right? So tunnel boring will be going on for a little over a year. I think it's between 12 to 18 months.
But it wouldn't start until like maybe 4 years out?
I think right now we're looking at launching the TBM in 2026-ish or 2026, 2027 timeframe. That would be the beginning of launching the TBM. Like you said, it'd probably go for about a year, between a year and a half. And then there's a lot of work after that, right? After the tunnel boring is complete.
I would like to speak quickly about, there's another great concern here that you're overlooking, and that is the diameter of the tunnel boring machines and the duration of time that they're going to be passing under our houses. You seem to think that we have, somebody said 3-foot footings under a 12-foot basement. We have no footings under many of these houses. The mortar is old sand mortar in low fire bricks. These low fire bricks are what are supporting our houses. These cannot be compared with modern construction. I don't think that anybody has addressed the difference in our architecture and the fragility of it. When these tunnel boring machines are going under us, we are worried that we are going to sustain hidden damage in our homes, which will surface years later. I can send you pictures of houses in the neighborhood that are collapsing just because of the deterioration of the materials they're built from. So we are very concerned that that this has not been addressed. How far those vibrations travel, your drawings do not show what is bedrock, what is sand, what direction these vibrations are going to travel in. We sometimes feel a truck a block away in our houses. So we're very worried about that part of construction.
I understand you are. I definitely understand you are. And that's part of the process that we go through. We work in, I was trying to point out the cities that we go through, because we go through cities which have historical houses. So I just need to be able to express myself to be able to talk, because I really think it's an important point and I really want to get to what you're saying. And there are federal guidelines, there are calculations, there's science behind what we're doing. Okay.
But no one has come into our home.
What I'm telling you is that there are propagations that occur because of these machineries. We know what the machines do. We do. And so we're able to calculate what the vibrations are for these particular locations. And we understand fragility. We understand that there are buildings that are far older than the 1800s. There are buildings in Rome that are built in the 1500s that they have to deal with.
Then why
And we're
are you
able
more
to- and
concerned
we're able
about
to tunnel
using our
successfully.
tunnel than our homes? When I asked if it could be bored under the existing tunnel, I was told that was foolish because it could damage it, because it's 150 years old. So why are you more concerned about a 150-year-old tunnel
I can't
than
compare
our
apples.
homes?
I don't know what your idea is, so I'm sorry, I can't respond to what you're saying.
Mr.
What I can
Rosa
respond
could,
to
when I asked
is
him,
that-
he could respond. He laughed at me. He thought it was a joke.
I'm
And
so
that's
sorry
how
that that
program
happened to you. That
managers-
is a terrible experience. But what I can tell you is that we've done, we had the math and we have the science and we have empirical data, which is the only way that we can be able to execute anything and understand how houses are gonna respond.
Thank you very much. So I'm pro-science, pro-engineering. I'm sure you're doing the highest level of, it's just, we're in the 21st century. We are using 21st century engineering technology that has also been applied in other places that are much older, much more fragile, probably not as deep. So I can appreciate what you're saying. My only question is, can you provide some comps as to what is an equivalent neighborhood, depth, risk of fragility of the structures, soil composition. Otherwise, I'm actually in full agreement with everything else. I just want to know where has it been done so that we can look at that and say look, your fears were unfounded.
Sure.
It's not going to happen. It's happened in these 5 other places, no issues. But
No, I mean, I think we can definitely provide comps.
Yeah, thank you.
In terms of the analysis, right, there are, David mentioned that there's federal standards and levels and thresholds, and they're different for modern day construction versus older, let's call it more fragile construction, right? And so based on the projections we have, those projections are lower than the thresholds for fragile older constructions, right? But in terms of, no, there's, so you go through the analysis, you end up with a projection, here's the number for the peak particle velocity or peak particle acceleration, I don't want to misspeak, and if it's above a certain threshold, which is defined by the project, right, the federal standard, then there has to be some mitigation provided. If it's below that threshold, that's what we're talking about, the science tells us that then there's not expected to be any impact on it.
So is there anything that is above in the neighborhood, or any of the neighborhoods? Trying to not be so reservoir tonight. Any of the neighbors along the way, is there anything above the threshold that will likely be upset?
There is not.
No. And then I wanted to, I know a couple people also, there's definitively a question around the ventilation facility, and I did want to give Andrew an opportunity to at least start to answer some of those questions. David, thank you very much for getting us through kind of the tunnel depth. Appreciate that.
I think it's a great suggestion about the comps. I mean, that's
David,
certainly
can
something
you tell us
we
how
can
deep
provide.
the existing BMP tunnel is? That would be helpful, actually. If you know the existing tunnel?
The existing tunnel depth? The existing tunnel depth?
I would have to get back to you, and I will get back to you. I will get back to you.
That's one question here. Yeah.
Actually, it's a combined question. One is, we understand the idea of theoretical charts. That's not the same as doing a full vibration study, not the one that was done, which then uses just chart.
I'm sorry, can you repeat what you said? Because I need to hear exactly what you're
Sorry.
saying. Yeah.
I'm saying that we understand theoretical charts. However, that's not the same as doing a full vibration study, which is not what was done here. It was a partial vibration study and then charts used to figure stuff out. My question is more that since 106 is identify properties, evaluate properties, their historical properties, and then make mitigation rules, since we know we were not properly identified in the first place, I'm confused about how we can say that then the evaluation was done. Since vibration studies were not done, a full vibration study was not done. There was some done, but that I get charts, but to study this architecture with these structures, with this equipment, and that means not just the TBMs, but the explosives under Linden, and the truck traffic, all of that destruction, etc., during that intensity and duration, and then the operation, and then let's throw freight into that. Because every time we ask directly about freight, it's downplayed in the PR and in the meetings, but then we push the wall and ask about it, we're told it is inevitable, and that it's part 2, phase 2. Well, when are you going to do phase 2? Well, when the funding is released, and we understand some funding was released a while back. So all of that is about architectural stability.
So, David, I'm going to just make sure I measure those.
Yeah, that was a lot.
Because those are a lot of questions at one time. I think the question about that you can answer.
Sure.
Can you stick to the one that you can answer,
Sure,
and then
so-
we'll get the right person to answer the
So-
next. I see your hand, Jordan.
So despite the fact that I work with Nancy, and Nancy is a good friend of mine, I in some ways divorced myself from that conversation just for a moment, theoretically, as you use that word. So what we considered is that everything was fragile and everything was the worst case scenario to be as conservative as possible to protect the buildings. Okay, so that's what we did. That was our vantage point to say, you know, we know that we need to consider the worst case scenario. We're not going to push the envelope. So I hope that makes sense to you.
Right. So it's working. And then I think one last. I only have like 3 minutes, Andrew, and I'm trying to be fair. That's not a fair situation. I'm sorry. So kind of the big picture, and then we'll have another follow-up conversation around the ventilation, but I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity. Please.
Sure. I'm Andrew Louie. I am tunnel ventilation and fire life safety. I designed the tunnel ventilation system here for this tunnel. In general, the tunnels actually under normal operations, the trains will pretty much ventilate themselves. So the movement of the train will push air through the tunnels, and the air will go at the portals, so the north and south portals. If there's a case where the tunnels are starting to get a little warm, we could turn on the fans, and generally we'll turn on the fans at the portals only, so that we will ventilate the tunnel from portal to portal, and you won't use the IVF at all. And even under normal operations, the IVF does not have any bypass dampers or shafts, so no tunnel air will actually come out of the IVF.
IVF is in our neighborhood, so you understand.
I understand.
No, they understand, because they might not,
So IVF is the intermediate ventilation facility, and using the term portal is where you're entering on one end or exiting on the other end. Just make sure everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, got it.
So the portal's not in Reservoir?
No, it's not.
There's an intermediate ventilation facility in Reservoir Hill, but it is between the two ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not quite in the middle. It's
You
between
want to
the
just
two
go
ends.
back to the map real quick?
Um,
The overall?
Yeah.
Yes. So the IVF really is only used for emergencies when we need to provide a lot of air down in the tunnel to support our emergency operations. And the amount of air to support that is a very significant amount. And if there's any kind of event that would need ventilation, the amount of air that we are providing would dilute a lot of the air. And so on the very, very rare chance that the IVF needs to be operated in exhaust, the air that would come out would be very diluted. So that was
just to orient everyone, the orange dots here that you see are the ventilation facilities. So this one is at the south portal. This is the intermediate that we've been talking about. This one is at the north portal.
So, yeah, we can't see your cursor.
Oh, you don't?
She's talking about the larger
I'm so
orange.
sorry.
This south over here, there's the intermediate, and then the north on this side.
Sorry.
So it's closed most of the time, so you're
Yes, the IVF is not used almost all the time. And in fact, the only time we use is a very rare chance an emergency would happen in the tunnel. And
An example.
like a fire, maybe the train catches fire. That would be the worst case.
Or a freight train
That-
derailing.
Yeah, overheating that may lead to a fire, lead to a train that would have to stop in the tunnel. Not just any fire, because Amtrak would try to pull the train out of the tunnel before they would stop it. But if there was some kind of overheating that would stop the train in the tunnel, that would be the worst case.
Where do the fumes go in the event of an emergency?
So that would
Say an
have to
electrical
depend.
fire.
Right. So, depending on where the train is stopped in the tunnel and which way the people have to evacuate in the tunnel, there may be a case that the tunnel air would have to be exhausted out of the IVF, but there is so much ventilation capacity there that you would dilute the air coming out of the tunnel.
Where would it go? In our neighborhoods?
Well, it would
Tell
come out of
that.
the IVF.
Tell that.
So
the residential.
And what kind of toxins are we talking about? What kind of pollutants are we talking about? Get specific on that, because I've been waiting for this.
I'm gonna help try to answer that question for you. So, the other piece is just kind of to clarify for everyone's edification, that the tunnels, the trains, the passenger trains that Amtrak operates passenger trains, and they're electric trains. Mark has also agreed to have electrified trains in the tunnel. So I just wanted to make sure I put that level set for anybody who may not.
Freight
be
trains.
Correct?
Freight trains.
Yeah, you said freight trains too.
About the freight that could be running through the tunnel. So when the freight is running through the tunnel, will the fans continuously run? And when you are running diesel maintenance trains, would those fans be exhausted into, and the fumes be exhausted into the residential?
For maintenance.
There's, once again, I know you guys keep asking this question. There's no plans to run freight trains through the tunnel. Now, okay, but I'll answer your question. I'll answer your question anyway. Hold on, I'll answer the question.
Put that in
anyway.
writing.
Regardless of what kind of train goes through the tunnel, the ventilation system works the same way, just like he described it, right? So, but there's no plans to operate freight trains through the tunnel.
So Amtrak can say no to freight? Amtrak is not a company?
So I'm gonna try to split those up, because I heard like 4 questions at once. So Mark's answer was, and the question that we've been asked is, what comes out? Mark's answer was, it doesn't matter whether it is a freight train or a passenger train that's electric, the operation of the vent facility is the same. So in normal operations, the ventilation is happening as the train is passing through the tunnel out of both ends on those portals. It doesn't matter what type of train it is.
Right.
Correct.
And it is, yes.
But
And
I
it is
agree
air.
though,
The
before it
existing-
was electric trains, when you all were planning on doing diesel, that the fans would have continuously run. So what is the difference now?
The IVF still would not run, we would just run
When it's
the portal
electric
fans.
trains, right? But
No,
when it's
period.
straight
Same for both
back,
types of trains. The maintenance trains or the electric trains would only operate the portal fans, and the air would only go out the portals.
So if there was a case where freight were to go through the tunnels, is there a possibility that those fumes would go out into this residential area?
No.
Why not?
It's still the same answer. They're still going out the portals. It is the same system that is currently in the existing tunnel.
Okay, so if there's a derailment of a freight train,
Yeah, please, thank you.
Isn't the IVF open? There are no dampers in the IVF, right? It's just
There are.
It's a big hole.
No.
And so the air can exchange. Are
No.
they closed?
It's
most
closed.
of the
It's
time?
closed.
Do you have an image that we can see? That would be awesome.
You know when it's closed and you know when it's open. And I'm not an engineer, but I can probably build an air quality indicator with a Strawberry Pie that has a glowing light that tells me what's in it, right? Are you able to like put a big ring light on top of the vent so we know when air is coming out and we know the quality of that air according to the federal air quality?
I don't know the answer.
Is it technically possible?
I don't know the answer, but I'm willing to ask the question. Well, no, but he's great, but I'm saying, I don't know. I'm not gonna put that question in Andrew's hands to answer.
he's the expert.
I'm not gonna put that question in Andrew's hands to answer. What I'm gonna say is that we will ask the question about whether that's something we can do, and I'll get back to you on the answer. Gentlemen in the back, you've had your hand up, and if you could just get your question. This is the last one. It is 7:58, and I have promised them that we're gonna be out of this building, so we're gonna have a very quick exit.
All right, thank you. I reside at 2205 Utah Place, so I'm directly beside Gated Medical Park. My question is, before the boring begins, or any of that begins, you have to raise that building. If you understand the architecture, the historic nature of the houses on that 2200 block of Utah, my house was not meant to be an in-house. There were 4 other townhouses plus another building at the end of the block. Those have been raised. What are you planning to do to strengthen the foundation and the support of my house, because all the other houses on that block, we share the walls. So if my house starts to pull, it's gonna pull everybody else's house. So I haven't heard any plans structurally of saying, okay, when we raise the medical park, which I understand is supposed to be in the spring, what are you gonna do to strengthen the foundation and like my sidewall, to help the remainder of the block stay intact? Because that's before any boring or anything else begins. That's just raising that one particular parcel.
Sure, so that's referred to as underpinning, and that's something that I have done before when a building is vulnerable. But what we see, despite the fact that you have what you consider a vulnerable foundation, in this condition, it is not going to be vulnerable to the activities that we are doing.
How do you know that?
How do I know that? Because of science.
I'm talking about the tearing down of the building. So there won't be anything holding up the wall that is beside my house. So I'm not talking about boring the tunnel.
You're talking about the demolition.
The demolition of the
When you
building.
say raise, I'm sorry.
So you live right, I know where you live.
You're talking about the demolition.
Yes, that is Mr. Davis. Now I understand. I am
Keandra.
so sorry that I missed.
Oops, watch out, watch out.
That's a very important question. So right now, we have to stabilize, we're requiring the contractor to stabilize the foundation and then what's known as the party wall for your house. So,
Okay.
And Mr. Davis, we're gonna meet with you.
yes, I am so sorry about that.
Misunderstood.
Yes.
Directly there with the demo contractor and working on what needs to be done.
So I'm gonna repeat Leah's statement because I don't think she doesn't have a mic. We are gonna meet with you to discuss that prior to the demolition, is what the statement was.
I know your house.
Okay.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, I misunderstood, when you said raise, I didn't understand, I was thinking elevate, like raise up.
raise
So I was
is tear
very,
down.
you're talking about tear down, I misunderstood your question, so thank you. So all, unfortunately, as I mentioned, we have to leave by 8. Our intention is to, continue this conversation, continue to come back and answer questions. What we will do is coordinate with your, presidents of your homeowners association